My name is Elena Navarro. I'm 34 years old, a paramedic, and the mother of a 6-year-old boy named Mateo. 3 weeks ago, at my sister's wedding, in front of more than 200 guests, she took the microphone, smiled at the crowd, and said, "My sister is the family's biggest disappointment. A single mom nobody wanted to keep." The ballroom burst into laughter. My mother leaned toward the table beside her, covering her mouth as if she were embarrassed, but I could see her shoulders shaking. She was laughing. My father turned away slightly, pressing his fist against his lips to hide the grin spreading across his face. And my son Mateo was sitting beside me, his small hand wrapped tightly around mine, staring at the room full of adults laughing at his mother. His voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, why are they laughing at you?" But there was one person in that room who didn't laugh. And what he did next changed everything. Before I tell you what happened, take a second to subscribe to Women Reddit Stories and turn on notifications if you enjoy real-life stories like this one. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me explain how we got to that moment. Because what happened at that wedding didn't start there. It started years earlier. I grew up in a narrow 3-story townhouse in San Diego, California, the kind of place with sun-bleached walls and bougainvillea climbing over the balcony railings. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. Inside, there were 2 types of daughters: the golden child and the backup plan. My younger sister Isabella was the golden child. She was 3 years younger than me, with glossy dark hair like our mother and the kind of effortless charm that made people forgive her before she even apologized. Teachers adored her. Neighbors complimented her. My parents built their entire world around her. From the moment she could speak in full sentences, Isabella was our star. And I was dependable. Responsible. Low maintenance, my mother liked to say. Which, in our house, meant I was the child who didn't need attention because I handled things myself. When Isabella turned 16, my parents threw her a birthday party in a rented rooftop venue overlooking the marina. White lights. Live music. More than 100 guests. When I turned 16 3 years earlier, my mother had baked a small chocolate cake and placed it on the kitchen counter. "We'll celebrate properly when things calm down," she told me. Things never did. Prom night told the same story. Isabella wore a custom-made red gown that cost more than my car eventually would. My mother spent 2 weeks helping her choose it. When my prom came around, I asked if we could go shopping together. My mother glanced up from her laptop. "Elena, sweetheart, you don't need something flashy. You've always been more practical." I wore a $70 dress from a clearance rack at Target. I remember the exact price because I paid for it with money I earned working weekends at a grocery store. Our bedroom said everything. Isabella had the room with the balcony and the ocean view. Mine faced the alley behind the building where delivery trucks rattled by every morning. But the strange thing was, I never hated her. Not really. How could I? She was just living inside the system my parents had built. Still, late at night, lying in bed listening to the ocean wind push against the windows, I used to wonder about something. What was wrong with me? What invisible flaw did my parents see that made them treat me like a placeholder in my own family? I didn't know then that the answer would follow me all the way to my sister's wedding day. I met David when I was 25. He was a bartender at a beachside restaurant near La Jolla, charming in that easy California way that made everyone feel relaxed around him. We started dating after I finished paramedic training. At first, everything felt simple. Easy. We married a year later. My parents attended the wedding, of course. But most of the reception conversations somehow drifted back to Isabella. "She's starting law school next fall," my mother told every guest who would listen. "She's going to do incredible things." I stood 10 feet away from her during one of those conversations, holding a glass of champagne. It was my wedding day. And she was introducing people to my sister's future. The marriage didn't last long. David had a habit of disappearing late at night after shifts, coming home smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. By the time I discovered he'd been seeing someone else for months, I was already 6 months pregnant with Matteo. The divorce was finalized when Matteo was just over a year old. I was 28. Working 24-hour paramedic shifts. Sleeping whenever my son slept. Trying to build a life out of exhaustion and determination. When I told my mother the marriage was over, she sighed the way people do when a restaurant messes up their order. "Well," she said, "I always worried you didn't know how to keep a man happy." Isabella would never let something like that happen. My father said nothing. He rarely did. Isabella sent me one text message. "That sucks. Maybe therapy would help you figure out why your relationships always crash." That was the entire conversation. No one asked how I was managing. No one asked if Matteo needed anything. No one offered help. But I told myself I didn't need them. Every night after long ambulance shifts, I would sit on the floor beside Matteo's crib in our tiny one-bedroom apartment and repeat the same thought over and over. "We'll be okay. We'll figure it out." 2 years before the wedding, Isabella started dating Nathan Carter. She met him at a charity fundraiser hosted by a legal foundation in downtown San Diego. Nathan was a civil rights attorney. The kind who worked long hours representing families who couldn't afford legal help. Quiet. Observant. The first time I met him was at a family dinner my parents hosted to show him off. Matteo was 4 at the time and shy around strangers. When we walked into the dining room, he hid behind my leg, clutching a toy dinosaur. Nathan crouched down immediately. "Hey," he said gently. "That a T-Rex?" Matteo nodded. For the rest of the evening, Nathan was the only person at that table who spoke directly to my son. I noticed him watching the room sometimes. Watching the way my mother steered every conversation back toward Isabella. Watching how my father laughed at Isabella's stories but barely acknowledged anything I said. Watching how I automatically stood up to clear dishes while my sister remained seated, scrolling through her phone. Later that night, as I carried Matteo to the car, Nathan followed me outside. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Sure." He hesitated. "Does your family always treat you like that?" I blinked. "Like what?" "Like you're invisible." I forced a small laugh. "That's just how things are. Isabella's the main event. I'm background noise." Nathan didn't laugh. He studied my face for a moment. "You seem like a good mom," he said finally. "Your son is lucky." Then he walked back into the house. I stood there for a long moment in the cool ocean air, wondering why that small, simple comment had made my throat tighten. I didn't know then that Nathan Carter would become the only person in that ballroom who refused to laugh. The wedding invitation arrived 3 months later. It came in a thick ivory envelope with gold lettering so elegant it looked like it belonged in a museum rather than a mailbox. "Isabella Navarro and Nathan Carter request the pleasure of your company." The ceremony would be held at the Grand Del Mar, one of the most expensive resorts in San Diego. Crystal chandeliers. Italian marble floors. Gardens trimmed so precisely they looked artificial. My parents were paying for everything. 250 guests. Estimated cost, somewhere near $180,000. For comparison, when I got married, my parents contributed exactly $1,500 and reminded me about it for years afterward. But the invitation itself wasn't the problem. The phone call that came 2 weeks before the wedding was. "Elena," Isabella said when I answered. Her voice had the same tone she used when ordering complicated coffee drinks. "I need to go over a few things." "Okay," I said. "First, the dress." "The dress?" "Yes. I'd appreciate it if you wore something neutral. Beige, maybe. Nothing bright. Nothing that might draw attention." I glanced at the emerald green dress hanging on my closet door. I had saved for 3 months to buy it. Sure, I said quietly. Second, she continued, about Matteo. My stomach tightened. What about him? She hesitated just long enough to sound polite. Do you really have to bring him? He's 6, Isabella. I know, but weddings can be long and kids get restless. I don't have anyone to watch him. There was a pause on the line. Then a small sigh. Fine. But make sure he stays quiet during the ceremony. And I've asked the planner to seat you near the back so you can step out quickly if he gets fussy. Near the back. I should have realized then. The morning of the wedding, my mother called. Elena, she said briskly, just a quick update about seating. Okay. You and Matteo are at table 19. Near the service doors. It's easier if you need to leave quickly. I see. And please don't make a scene about it. Today is Isabella's day. Scene. That word echoed in my head for a long time after the call ended. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to get through the day. The ballroom at the Grand Del Mar was breathtaking. High ceilings. Gold-trimmed columns. White roses spilling from towering arrangements on every table. A string quartet played softly in the corner as guests filtered in wearing gowns and tuxedos that probably cost more than my rent. Matteo squeezed my hand as we walked in. Mommy, he whispered, eyes wide. This place looks like a castle. It kind of does, I said. He wore a tiny navy blazer and khakis. His hair was combed neatly to one side. He looked impossibly small in that enormous room. We found table 19 exactly where my mother promised it would be. Half hidden behind a pillar. Right next to the kitchen doors where catering staff rushed in and out carrying trays. The other seats were filled with distant relatives I barely knew. No one from my immediate family came to greet us. Across the room, my parents made their entrance. My mother wore a champagne-colored designer gown. My father's suit probably cost more than my car. They moved through the crowd like celebrities, hugging guests and accepting compliments. Your daughter looks stunning, someone said. Thank you, my mother replied. We're so proud of Isabella. Isabella. Singular. She arrived 30 minutes later. Her dress was a dramatic ivory gown with a sweeping train and lace sleeves. The kind of dress you see on magazine covers. The room practically gasped when she walked in. She looked radiant. Confidence. Victorious. Her eyes found me across the ballroom. She smiled. But it wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who had already won a competition nobody else realized they were competing in. On her way to the head table, she stopped briefly beside ours. Elena, she said. You made it. Of course I did. She glanced down at Matteo. Then back at me. Just remember what we talked about. Then she walked away before I could answer. During the ceremony, I sat in the last row with Matteo on my lap. The vows were beautiful. Nathan looked sincere when he promised to build a life with Isabella. My parents dabbed their eyes with embroidered handkerchiefs. Guests whispered about how perfect the couple looked together. I watched from the back of the room, feeling strangely detached. During cocktail hour, the photographer gathered family members for pictures. I started to stand. But my mother appeared beside me. Not yet, she said quickly. We're doing immediate family first. I am immediate family. We're doing a smaller grouping first. I understood. I always understood. Matteo tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, why aren't we in the pictures? We'll take our own pictures later, I said softly. He accepted the answer the way children do, trusting. The reception began with champagne and soft music. Guests filled the dance floor. I noticed Nathan's cousin setting up a phone on a small tripod near the stage. Probably live streaming for relatives who couldn't attend. I didn't think much about it at the time. The evening moved forward like any wedding reception. dinner, speeches, music. Then the MC tapped his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced. "The bride would like to say a few words." Applause filled the room. Isabella stood gracefully, accepting the microphone with a smile. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. Her voice was warm and polished. "I'm so grateful to celebrate this day with everyone I love." She thanked the venue, the caterers, her bridesmaids, my parents. My mother pressed her hand dramatically to her chest as if overwhelmed with emotion. "And family," Isabella continued. "Family teaches us so much about who we are and who we want to become." Her eyes moved across the room, then stopped. On me. Especially my sister. Matteo looked up at me. "Aunt Bella's talking about you." "I know," I whispered. "Shoo." Isabella's smile widened slightly. "Elena," she called into the microphone. "Why don't you stand up?" 200 heads turned toward our table. I froze. But slowly, I stood. Matteo clutched my hand. "There she is," Isabella said brightly. "My big sister." She paused just long enough for the room to focus. "You know," she continued, tilting her head thoughtfully, "my sister taught me one of the most important lessons of my life." A few guests chuckled politely. "See," she said sweetly, "Elena is a single mother." The room shifted slightly. "And she got married young. Had a baby. And then—" She shrugged dramatically. "Well, her husband left." A few scattered laughs echoed across the room. Heat flooded my face. "My sister is, what's the word?" She pretended to think. "Unwanted." The laughter grew louder. Matteo squeezed my hand harder. "Mom?" But Isabella wasn't finished. "Honestly," she said, smiling brightly at the crowd, "she's basically a cautionary tale." Then, from the head table, my mother leaned forward and said loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear, "She's damaged goods." And this time, the entire room laughed. The laughter rolled across the ballroom like a wave. It started in small pockets, a few nervous chuckles near the front tables, then spread outward as people realized others were laughing too. 200 adults. Crystal glasses clinking. Soft music fading into the background. And the sound of people laughing at me. I stood there frozen bedside table 19, my hand still gripping Matteo's. He looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy," he whispered. "Why are they laughing?" My throat closed. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. On stage, Isabella basked in the reaction like a performer who had just delivered her best line. She lifted her champagne glass slightly. "Now don't get me wrong," she continued, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "I love my sister." Another ripple of laughter. "But sometimes the people closest to us teach us the most important lessons." She paced slowly across the stage, clearly enjoying the attention. "Growing up, people always asked why Elena and I turned out so different." She shrugged lightly. "Same parents. Same house. Same opportunities." Her hand gestured lazily toward me. "And yet." The crowd leaned in. "I guess some people are just meant to be examples of what not to do with your life." The laughter grew louder. A group of her law school friends at one of the front tables nearly choked on their champagne. Matteo's fingers tightened around mine until it hurt. His body pressed against my leg. He didn't understand the words. But he understood the tone. Children always do. And in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach drop. Isabella was holding note cards. Typed. Organized. Prepared. This wasn't a joke. This was rehearsed. Planned. Honestly, Isabella continued with a playful sigh, I used to feel bad for her. She placed a hand dramatically over her chest. Poor Elena. Poor Elena with her tiny apartment and her ambulance shifts and her situation. She gestured toward Matteo. And now she's raising a kid by herself. More laughter. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. My father leaned back in his chair, shoulders shaking silently. Isabella raised her glass toward me. So really, she said brightly, I should thank her. The room quieted slightly. For showing me exactly what I didn't want my life to become. She lifted her champagne higher. To Elena. My personal cautionary tale. Many guests lifted their glasses automatically. Some still laughed. Others looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Not one person told her to stop. Not one person told her she had gone too far. Except one. At the head table, Nathan slowly pushed back his chair. The movement was subtle at first. The scraping of wood against marble. But it carried across the suddenly quiet room. Isabella noticed. Her smile flickered. Nathan, she said lightly. But he didn't answer. He stood up. Tall. Composed. His expression had changed completely. His eyes moved across the ballroom until they landed on Matteo. My son had buried his face against my hip. His shoulders shook with quiet sobs he was trying desperately to hide. Nathan saw that. And something in his face hardened. He walked toward the stage. Not quickly. Not angrily. Just with quiet certainty. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor. One step. Then another. The room went silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. 200 people watched him cross the ballroom. Isabella laughed nervously into the microphone. Okay, she said. My husband wants the mic now. But Nathan wasn't smiling. When he reached the stage, he stepped directly in front of her. She lowered the microphone slightly. Nathan, what are you? He took the microphone from her hand. Not violently. Not abruptly. Just firmly. Like removing something dangerous from someone who shouldn't be holding it. The room held its breath. Isabella blinked in confusion. Nathan? He didn't look at her. His eyes moved across the ballroom until they found me again. Then he turned back to the guests. I apologize for interrupting, he said calmly. His voice carried clearly across the room. But there's something that needs to be said. No one moved. No one spoke. Nathan's gaze returned briefly to Matteo. Still crying. Still hiding against me. I've spent the last 2 years around this family, Nathan continued. 2 years watching how they treat Elena Navarro. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Isabella grabbed his sleeve. Nathan, stop, she whispered sharply. You're embarrassing me. He gently removed her hand from his arm. No, he said quietly. You did that yourself. The words landed like a hammer. He looked back at the crowd. I'm a civil rights attorney, he said. My entire career has been about protecting people from abuse. From systems that allow cruelty to go unchecked. He pointed toward our table. Toward Matteo. That little boy is 6 years old. Silence. 6. His voice hardened. And tonight he just watched 200 adults laugh at his mother while she was called unwanted. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. My mother's smile had disappeared. My father stared at his plate. You called her damaged goods, Nathan said, looking directly at my mother. You called her unwanted, he added, glancing at Isabella. While her child listened. The silence became suffocating. Nathan took a breath. I will not marry into a family that thinks cruelty is entertainment. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Isabella's face went pale. What? She whispered. Nathan turned toward her. I can't marry you, Isabella. The words echoed through the room. The reaction was immediate. Shock. Whispers. Chairs scraping. You're overreacting, Isabella said quickly, her voice rising. It was a joke. Nathan laughed once. A hollow sound. A joke? He gestured toward me and Matteo. You planned that speech. You rehearsed humiliating your sister in front of hundreds of people. He stepped away from her slightly, creating a visible distance. I won't build a life with someone who finds that funny. Isabella's mouth opened and closed. The color drained from her face. Nathan glanced toward the edge of the dance floor. Toward the small tripod with the phone recording. My cousin has been live streaming this reception for relatives who couldn't attend. A ripple of whispers spread across the room. So roughly 50 more people just witnessed exactly what kind of family I almost married into. He placed the microphone gently on the stage floor. I'm sorry for the disruption to your evening, he said calmly to the stunned guests. The bar is still open. Then he stepped down from the stage and walked straight toward table 19. The moment Nathan stepped off the stage, the ballroom erupted into chaos. Not loud chaos at first. More like 1,000 quiet conversations starting at the same time. Whispers. Gasps. Chairs scraping across marble floors. People leaning toward each other asking the same question. Did that really just happen? At the head table, Isabella stood frozen, still clutching the edge of her wedding gown. Her face had turned ghost white beneath the carefully applied makeup. My mother was on her feet within seconds. Elena. Her voice sliced across the ballroom like a knife. Every head turned toward our corner again. She stormed across the room in her champagne-colored gown, her heels striking the floor with sharp, angry clicks. My father followed behind her, slower but just as tense. I stayed where I was. Matteo still clung to me, his face buried against my side. My mother stopped 2 feet away from our table. Her eyes burned with fury. What did you do? She hissed. The accusation was immediate. Automatic. What did I do? I repeated quietly. You poisoned Nathan against Isabella, she snapped. You couldn't stand to see her happy, could you? My stomach dropped. For a second I thought maybe I'd misheard her. You ruined your sister's wedding, she continued loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. You've always been jealous of her. Jealous. The word echoed in my head. My father finally spoke. What did you tell him behind our backs, Elena? I stared at them. I truly did not understand how they had reached this conclusion. I didn't tell him anything. Liar, Isabella's voice cut through the room. She had walked halfway down the aisle now, her long train dragging behind her like a wounded animal. Mascara streaked her cheeks. You've been trying to turn him against me since the day we met, she said. You couldn't let me have one perfect day. Around us, guests watched the scene unfold like spectators at a live theater performance. Some looked uncomfortable. Others openly curious. I could practically see the narrative shifting inside their heads. A bride humiliated at her own wedding. A jealous sister causing trouble. The story was rewriting itself in real time. I saw it happening. And I realized something important. If I stayed there, if I argued with them in front of all those people, the story would become exactly what they wanted. Elena ruined the wedding. Elena caused a scene. Elena was jealous. I looked down at Matteo. His eyes were red and swollen. His tiny fists pressed against my dress as if holding on to the only solid thing left in the room. And suddenly none of the whispers mattered. None of the guests mattered. Not even Isabella mattered. Only him. For 34 years, I had been the quiet one. The one who didn't argue. The one who absorbed every insult and kept the peace. Because it was easier. Because conflict made things worse. Because maybe, someday, if I was patient enough, they would finally see me. But my son had just watched 200 adults laugh at his mother. And that changed something inside me. I stood up. Not dramatically. Just slowly. Calmly. I smoothed down the front of my beige dress. Then I lifted Matteo into my arms. My mother crossed her arms. Well, she demanded. I didn't say anything to Nathan, I said quietly. The words were clear and steady. I didn't need to. My father frowned. What does that mean? It means he has eyes. Silence. He's been watching how this family treats me for 2 years. My voice remained calm. He saw it tonight and decided he couldn't live with it. You're lying, Isabella snapped. You've always hated me. I didn't respond. What was the point? Instead, I turned toward the ballroom doors. Elena, my mother shouted. You come back here and apologize to your sister right now. I kept walking. Behind me I heard chairs moving. Guests whispering louder. Someone dropped a glass. But I didn't stop. Matteo wrapped his arms around my neck. His voice was small. Mommy, are we leaving? Yes, baby. Good, he whispered. I don't like it here. I know. I kissed the top of his head. The distance from table 19 to the ballroom exit was maybe 30 feet. It felt like walking across an entire city. Every step echoed. Every pair of eyes followed us. Near the doorway, I saw Nathan standing beside the wall. He wasn't leaving. He was waiting. When I reached him, he stepped forward slightly. Elena. His voice was low. Only meant for me. I'm sorry. I shook my head gently. You don't need to apologize. I should have said something years ago, he said. I saw what was happening. I just convinced myself it wasn't my place. You said something when it mattered. Matteo shifted in my arms. Nathan glanced at him. His expression softened. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a small card. White. Simple. Nathan Carter. Attorney at law. Civil rights and family advocacy. If you ever need anything, he said quietly. Legal help. Advice. Anything. He hesitated. I mean it. I tucked the card into my purse. Thank you. Behind us, Isabella's voice rose in hysterics. My mother shouting at the wedding planner. My father barking instructions at someone. The sound of a perfect evening collapsing. I didn't look back. I pushed open the heavy ballroom doors and stepped into the quiet hallway. The sudden silence felt surreal. Matteo lifted his head slightly. Mommy? Yes. Are you sad? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said softly. For the first time all night, the answer felt true. I'm not sad. He studied my face. Then nodded. Can we get pancakes when we go home? I smiled. Chocolate chip pancakes. His face brightened immediately. All the chocolate chips? All of them. By the time Matteo was bathed, fed, and asleep in his small bed that night, my phone had exploded with notifications. 48 missed calls. 30 from my mother. 13 from Isabella. 5 from my father. I opened the messages. Mom, 10:42 p.m. You ruined everything. Mom, 10:49 p.m. Isabella is hysterical. Call me now. Mom, 11:02 p.m. I cannot believe you would do this to your own sister. Isabella, 11:14 p.m. I will never forgive you. Dad, 11:27 p.m. Your mother is very upset. You need to call her. I stared at the screen. Then set the phone face down on the nightstand. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me open the message. Aunt Rosa. My father's younger sister. Elena, I watched the live stream. I'm so sorry. What they did to you was cruel. Please know you didn't deserve that. I read the message twice. Then a third time. Because in 34 years, it was the first time anyone in my family had ever said that. And suddenly the tears I had been holding back all night finally came. The screenshots arrived the next morning. It was a little after 8 when my phone buzzed again while I was making Mateo breakfast. He sat at the kitchen table swinging his legs under the chair, carefully pouring too much syrup over a stack of chocolate chip pancakes. My phone lit up with a message from Rachel, my best friend from paramedic school. Rachel. Don't look at social media yet. Another message followed immediately. Rachel. Actually, call me when you can. There's something you need to see. Then a third message. Rachel. I'm serious, Elena. I think your family planned this. My stomach tightened. Planned. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the images she had attached. 17 screenshots. All from the same group chat. The title at the top read: Navarro family, private. A chat I hadn't been part of for almost a year. I had been quietly removed after asking why Mateo and I hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving dinner. The first screenshot was dated 2 weeks before the wedding. Isabella. I'm working on my speech and I'm going to call Elena out. She needs to hear the truth for once. My chest tightened. Below it was my mother's response. Mom. Just don't go too far, sweetheart. We don't want people thinking we're cruel. Isabella. Mom, please. It's just a roast. People will laugh. Another message from my mother. Mom. Well, if you do it, make it funny. Then my father. Dad. Just leave me out of it. The next screenshot made my hands shake. Isabella. I'm thinking of saying she's basically unwanted. Like a cautionary tale. Mom. Honestly, not wrong. Then another message. Mom. Maybe add something about her being damaged goods. My throat went dry. The same words she had shouted across the ballroom. There were more. Dozens of messages. Suggestions. Jokes. Even edits to the speech. Isabella. Trust me, she won't say anything back. She never does. Mom. Exactly. Dad. Just make sure the guests can hear it clearly. I stared at the phone until the words blurred together. They hadn't just allowed it. They had helped write it. Every insult. Every laugh. Every word. Rachel's final message appeared under the screenshots. Rachel. One of your cousins sent these to a friend who sent them to me. I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't know how bad it was. I slowly lowered the phone onto the counter. Across the table, Mateo looked up. Mommy? Yes, baby? You forgot your pancakes. I blinked. The smell of syrup and coffee filled the tiny apartment. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window. Life continued. But something inside me had shifted permanently. For 34 years, I had been trying to earn something that didn't exist. My mother's approval. My father's attention. My sister's respect. I had bent myself into smaller and smaller shapes trying to become someone they might finally love. But reading those messages made something painfully clear. They had never intended to love me. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a role. The family disappointment. The punchline. The example of failure. And suddenly I understood something else too. There was nothing left to save. Mateo finished his pancakes and ran to get dressed for school. When he disappeared into the bedroom, I picked up my phone again. I opened a blank note. And typed 2 words. No contact. That was it. No speeches. No emotional phone calls. No attempts to explain how deeply they had hurt me. Because they already knew. They just didn't care. I blocked my mother's number first. Then Isabella's. Then my father's. My phone felt strangely quiet afterward. Like a room after someone finally turns off a loud television. 3 days later, they showed up at my apartment. I had just gotten home from a 24-hour shift. Matteo bounced beside me on the sidewalk, excitedly telling me about a dinosaur drawing he made at school. We reached the front steps of my building. And there they were. My mother stood near the entrance in a long beige coat. My father beside her, hands stuffed awkwardly into his jacket pockets. They looked wildly out of place in the small apartment complex parking lot. "Elena," my mother said sharply. Matteo tightened his grip on my hand. "Mommy, why is Grandma here?" "I don't know," I said quietly. Our neighbor Mrs. Alvarez had just opened her door across the hallway. She watched the scene with narrowed eyes. "Matteo," I said gently. "Why don't you go sit with Mrs. Alvarez for a minute?" "Okay." He ran inside without question. Mrs. Alvarez gave me a subtle nod before closing the door behind him. Then I turned back to my parents. "You blocked our numbers," my mother said immediately. Her voice trembled with outrage. "Yes. After what you did to your sister." I stared at her. "What I did?" "You destroyed her wedding," she snapped. "The venue is demanding full payment and the caterers won't refund anything." My father nodded grimly. "Do you have any idea how much money you cost this family?" I laughed. The sound surprised even me. A short, sharp laugh that made my mother flinch. "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "Isabella stood in front of 200 people and called me unwanted." "She was joking," my mother said instantly. "You called me damaged goods." "Well, maybe if you hadn't." "In front of my 6-year-old son." My voice stayed quiet. But something in it made her stop talking. "Matteo asked me why everyone was laughing at his mother," I continued. For a moment I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Something close to guilt. But it vanished almost immediately. "Isabella is devastated," my mother said stiffly. "Nathan won't return her calls. She's talking about therapy." "Good." The word slipped out before I could stop it. My mother's face darkened. "How dare you?" "Therapy might actually help her," I said. "I'm not finished," my mother snapped. "You're going to call your sister and apologize." I held up my hand. For the first time in my life, I interrupted her. "I'm going to say this once." The hallway fell silent. "You planned that speech?" Her expression froze. "I saw the screenshots from the family group chat," I continued. "You helped write it." My father looked down at the floor. My mother's face slowly drained of color. "Elena. I spent 34 years trying to understand why my own family treated me like I was a mistake." My voice stayed steady. "You called me damaged goods in front of 200 people." My mother opened her mouth. But no words came out. "I love you," I said quietly. "I always have." The words surprised even me. "But I won't raise Matteo in a family where cruelty is normal." I stepped back toward my door. "So this is where it ends." My mother's face twisted. "You're going to regret this," she said. "When I'm gone someday, you'll wish you had been a better daughter." The old guilt tactic. For years it had worked every time. But now it felt strangely powerless. "Maybe," I said softly. "Or maybe I'll know I protected my son from the same damage you did to me." The door to Mrs. Alvarez's apartment opened slightly. Matteo peeked out. "Mommy?" I smiled. "A minute, baby." My mother lunged forward suddenly. "Matteo, sweetheart, come give Grandma a hug." I stepped between them. "No." The word hung in the hallway. "He's my grandson," she snapped. "And he's my son." I took Matteo's hand. And I decide who gets access to him. My father finally spoke. Let's all just calm down. Goodbye, Dad. I opened the apartment door. Then paused. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. I'm doing it because I finally understand something. They both looked at me. I deserve better. Then I stepped inside. And locked the door. The video spread faster than anyone in my family could control. Within a week, it had made its way through almost every branch of the extended Navarro family. Cousins. Aunts. Uncles. People I hadn't spoken to in years. It moved the way family gossip always does, quietly at first, then all at once. Someone had saved the live stream from Nathan's cousin's phone. Someone else downloaded it. Then someone sent it to a relative. That relative sent it to 3 more. And suddenly the entire family network had seen it. Every second. Every word. Every laugh. Aunt Rosa called me the following Tuesday evening. Elena, she said when I answered. Her voice sounded both furious and tired. I just got off the phone with your Uncle Javier in Phoenix. He saw the video. I leaned back against the couch, watching Mateo build a tower of blocks on the living room rug. And? He used words about your mother and Isabella that I can't repeat. Despite everything, a small flicker of satisfaction sparked in my chest. I didn't send the video to anyone, I said quietly. You didn't have to, she replied. Once something like that exists, it travels on its own. She paused. Your mother called me yesterday. Really? She wanted help controlling the narrative. I almost laughed. What narrative? That it was just a joke that got taken out of context. I stared at the floor. Did she actually say that? Word for word. Aunt Rosa sighed heavily. Elena, I told her the narrative managed itself the moment she called her own daughter damaged goods in front of 200 witnesses and a camera. Mateo knocked over his tower of blocks and laughed. The simple, joyful sound filled the room. For a moment I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle around me. How is Isabella? I asked finally. There was a brief pause. Not good, Aunt Rosa admitted. Nathan officially ended the engagement 2 days after the wedding. I wasn't surprised. What about his family? They returned all the engagement gifts. How? Through their lawyer. I exhaled slowly. Apparently Nathan's mother, a retired family court judge, had written a letter explaining that their family did not wish to be associated with public displays of cruelty. Professional language wrapped around a devastating message. And your mother? I asked. Aunt Rosa snorted softly. She's calling everyone she knows trying to explain that it was a misunderstanding. And? People saw the video, Elena. She paused. Spin only works when there's no evidence. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. Not triumphant. Not even vindicated. Mostly just tired. A few days later, Rachel texted me again. Rachel. Your sister posted something. I hesitated before opening the screenshot she sent. It was a long Facebook post from Isabella. Carefully written. Polished. The kind of statement someone probably revised several times before publishing. I want to address the misunderstanding that occurred at my wedding, it began. What was intended as light-hearted family humor was taken out of context by individuals unfamiliar with the dynamics between my sister and me. I kept reading. My sister Elena and I have always shared a playful relationship. My jaw tightened. And it deeply saddens me that private family humor has been misinterpreted by outside parties with their own agendas. 6 paragraphs. Not a single apology. Not one acknowledgement of the actual words she had said. Rachel had also included screenshots of the comment section. It was brutal. Someone wrote. I saw the video. That wasn't playful. Another comment. You literally called your sister unwanted in front of her child. Another. Girl, this ain't it. Apparently some of Isabella's co-workers had started asking questions. One person claimed her firm had called a meeting about professional conduct outside the workplace. I closed the screenshot. I didn't feel satisfied. Just exhausted. About a week later, Aunt Rosa called again. You'll appreciate this one, she said. What happened? Nathan's mother called your mother directly. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. She told her, and I quote, I didn't raise my son to marry into a family of bullies. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not loudly. Just quietly. The sound surprised me. How did my mother react? I asked. Not well. We both knew that was an understatement. By that point, Isabella had lost her fiancé. Her reputation was cracking. And my mother was scrambling to rewrite a story the entire extended family had already watched unfold. And the strangest part? I hadn't done anything. I hadn't posted the video. I hadn't defended myself publicly. I hadn't tried to expose them. The truth had simply done its job. 3 weeks after the wedding, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I would have ignored it. But something about it made me answer. Hello? Elena? I recognized the voice immediately. Nathan. I sat down slowly on the couch. Nathan, hi. I hope I'm not overstepping by calling. No, I said softly. You're not. There was a short pause. I wanted to apologize. You already did. Not properly. His voice sounded tired. Heavy. I watched your family treat you like you were invisible for 2 years, he continued. 2 years, Elena. I didn't know what to say. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere, he said. That Isabella would grow out of it. He exhaled slowly. I'm a civil rights attorney. My job is literally recognizing abusive dynamics. The frustration in his voice was clear. And I still ignored it. You didn't know how bad it was, I said gently. I knew enough. Another pause. That night, he continued quietly, when I saw Matteo crying. His voice cracked slightly. That little boy watching his mother get humiliated for entertainment. Silence filled the phone. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. You didn't just speak up, I said. You ended your own wedding. It was the only decision I could live with. The honesty in his voice felt heavy. I meant what I said about helping you, he added. If your family tries to harass you, or if you ever need legal help with custody issues or anything else, I'm here. Why? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Because Matteo deserves someone in his corner. The words hit harder than I expected. And so do you. I swallowed the sudden tightness in my throat. Thank you, Nathan. Take care of yourself, Elena. You too. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time. Then I looked over at Matteo. He was asleep on the couch with a dinosaur book resting on his chest. For the first time in years. The silence in my life felt peaceful. 6 months passed. It's strange how life quietly rearranges itself once you remove the people who were constantly tearing it apart. My apartment didn't change much. It was still the same small one-bedroom place with creaky pipes and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to stand in at once. But somehow it felt different. Lighter. Matteo's drawings covered the refrigerator now, crayon dinosaurs, bright suns, and one slightly crooked picture of the 2 of us holding hands under a blue sky. He had labeled it carefully in green marker. Mommy and me. I hung it at eye level. Right where I could see it every morning. A few weeks after the wedding, I started therapy. Once a week. 50 minutes in a quiet office with a soft-spoken therapist named Dr. Lin who had the kind of calm presence that made silence feel safe instead of awkward. During our third session, she said something that stayed with me. "Elena, you grew up as the scapegoat in a family system that needed someone to blame." I sat quietly, absorbing the words. "That role had nothing to do with your worth," she continued gently. "It had everything to do with the dysfunction around you." For the first time in my life, someone was explaining my childhood in a way that actually made sense. And it wasn't my fault. Life began to move forward. Slowly. Quietly. I received a promotion at work 3 months after the wedding. Senior paramedic. My supervisor called me into her office one afternoon and closed the door behind us. "Elena," she said, smiling, "your patient feedback scores are the highest in the department." I blinked. "You're calm under pressure. Compassionate with families. And your team trusts you." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. "I'd like you to lead one of the night crews." I stared at the promotion letter for a long time. Then excused myself and cried in the break room bathroom. Not sad tears. The kind that come when something inside you finally starts believing you might actually be good enough. Matteo started first grade that fall. He made friends quickly. A talkative boy named Oliver who loved trucks. And a quiet girl named Lily who shared Matteo's obsession with dinosaurs. His teacher sent home a note after the first month. "Matteo is a joy to have in class. He's kind, curious, and always willing to help others." I taped that note beside his drawings. The attempts from my family didn't stop. They just changed shape. The first was a birthday card for Matteo. It arrived 2 weeks late. No return address. But I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Inside was a $100 bill and a short note. "For our grandson. We miss you." I deposited the money into Matteo's college savings account. Then recycled the card. A few weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. "Isabella. Using a friend's phone. Elena, we need to talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Call me." I didn't respond. Another message came a month later. This time a voicemail. My mother's voice filled the small speaker. "Elena, this has gone on long enough. Family is family. You can't just cut us out forever." I deleted it before she finished speaking. The hardest attempt came from my father. He showed up at my workplace one afternoon. Something he had never done before in the 9 years I had worked as a paramedic. I found him sitting in the hospital waiting area looking deeply uncomfortable. "5 minutes," he said when I approached. "Please." We stepped outside into the gray afternoon. The wind carried the faint sound of ambulance sirens in the distance. "Your mother isn't doing well," he said quietly. "She cries every day." I waited. "Isabella barely leaves the house." Another pause. "Thanksgiving was quiet this year." I looked at him. For once, my father didn't seem like the distant man who always stayed silent. He just looked tired. "I know what happened at the wedding wasn't right," he said finally. The words seemed to cost him something. "But your mother loves you in her own way." I shook my head gently. "Dad. I spent 34 years waiting for her to love me in a way that didn't hurt." He lowered his gaze. "I can't wait anymore." He nodded slowly. "I understand." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. Tonight, as I'm telling this story, it's been 8 months since Isabella's wedding. Matteo is asleep in the next room. His dinosaur nightlight casts soft green shapes across the ceiling. Tomorrow is his 7th birthday. There's a homemade chocolate cake in my refrigerator. Too much frosting. Exactly how he likes it. I also have a second-hand bicycle hidden in my neighbor's garage wrapped with a blue ribbon I had to retie 3 times. Life isn't perfect. But it's peaceful. I'm seeing someone now. His name is Michael. He's a pediatric nurse. Kind. Patient. The kind of person who listens when people speak. And when he tells me I'm beautiful, he says it like he actually believes it. A few weeks ago, Matteo brought home a school assignment. A family tree project. Most of the other kids had drawn grandparents, cousins, uncles, and sprawling branches of relatives. Matteo's drawing had only 2 people. A tall woman. And a small boy holding her hand. "That's our family," he said proudly. "Just us." I hung it on the refrigerator. Right beside the dinosaur pictures. My mother still tries to contact me occasionally through relatives. Isabella too. Letters. Messages passed along through cousins. I don't hate them. That's the strange part. For a long time I was angry. Angry about the favoritism. The cruelty. The years of trying to prove I deserved to exist in my own family. But somewhere along the way, the anger faded. Not into forgiveness. Not into reconciliation. Just peace. I chose myself. I chose my son. And that choice saved us both. If you're listening to this story and something in it feels familiar. If you've ever had to set boundaries with someone you loved. If you've ever had to choose your own peace over family expectations. Then you understand how hard that choice can be. But sometimes walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Women Reddit Stories and turn on notifications. There are more stories like this one, stories about boundaries, healing, and finding the strength to choose yourself. And if you're comfortable sharing, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone for the sake of your own peace? You're not alone. None of us are.